whose whose work spans from media and communications, climate justice, international law, environmental rights, to even strategic litigation and human rights advocacy. Today's conversation is not just about putting a spotlight on careers, but it is also about purpose, impact, and showing young people the many ways in which they can use social justice through their work. So whether you're interested in law, media, research, advocacy, we hope that today's conversation will leave you encouraged and inspired to look into these many different career paths. Before we dive into our conversation, we will begin with a video, which is essentially the heart of today's conversation. It will showcase the different pathways that are in activism.
Yep. How about this farmer? Yep. This poet, salesperson, cook, mechanic, waiter, teacher? Anyone can be a human rights defender, regardless of their age, occupation, nationality, or wealth. Because we're all good at something. Even if it's just lending a hand. So what's your something? Can you make a poster, give a speech, start a podcast, draw a comic, knit, sing, code, organize, or show up? Then you have what it takes to be a human rights defender. Because human rights defenders are everyday people like you who choose to peacefully act against injustice using whatever strengths they have. They see something unfair, they take it personally, and they take action. They accept the importance of all human rights and don't reject the ones they aren't focused on. And they know things won't be fixed overnight. They defend human rights because it's the right thing to do. So if you'd like to live in a more just and equal world, ask yourself, are you a human rights defender?
Thank you so much, Nigel, for that video. So thank you everyone for joining us today. And I would like to begin the conversation by first of all, giving a special welcome to our panelists. We are firstly joined by Ezile Madlala, a candidate attorney at Lawyers for Human Rights, working within environmental rights program, whose work focuses on the intersection of human rights, environmental justice, and accountability in extractive industries. We are also joined by Lalelisile Mncwabe, a media and communications intern at Amnesty International South Africa and a graduate of Rhodes University who is passionate about storytelling as a tool for advocacy and using media to amplify voices, raise awareness, and drive meaningful social impact. We're also joined by Nciko Arnold, international law and climate justice expert whose work is grounded in decolonial approaches. He serves as a climate justice advisor and coordinator of the Rights and Respecting Economies and Environmental Justice program at Amnesty International's East and Southern Africa Regional Office. And lastly, we are joined by also Kayan Leung, a multidisciplinary human rights lawyer with over 11 years of experience in policy analysis, advocacy, training, material development, research, strategic litigation, and management. Her work also focuses on issues relating to gender-based violence, gender, environmental rights, business, human rights, refugees, and migration. Kayan is also currently the Deputy Director at Lawyers for Human Rights. So please help me welcome our panelists for today. At the beginning, of course, I touched a bit on who our panelists are. And so, to expand on that and to begin the conversation, I would love for each of them to briefly introduce themselves and to basically share rather, how their journey into activism, advocacy, or human rights began. I'd like to start off with Ezile. Your work focuses on environmental justice and mining affected communities. I would like to know what first sparked your interest in that area of law and advocacy.
Thank you so much, Nobukosi. Thank you, everybody, for having me. Good evening. My name is Ezile Madlala. I am a candidate attorney at Lawyers for Human Rights under the Environmental Rights Program. So for me, law started as something that, because I grew up from the villages, and growing up there, I used to notice a lot of injustices growing up. And part of me knew that that was something that I didn't want to see happening, but I just didn't know how to actually stand up for the people that I saw going through the injustices. And growing up, noticing and also realizing what law is, I knew that deep down, this is something that I want to work on, and it's something that I want to use as a tool to fight for the injustices. So I will just end there. Hopefully, I will be able to share more of what sparked my interest into diving into human rights space and also just environmental rights space. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ezile. I mean, to move on to Kayan, who also, like Ezile, is working at Lawyers for Human Rights, but is the current director. I would like to know, I mean, you've worked across strategic litigation, policy, advocacy, and training. What originally motivated you to enter the human rights sector?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and such a privilege to be here. And maybe just to also say that I'm proudly part of the Amnesty International brand as a board member, so it's a huge honor to be able to speak and share. I think very similar to a lot of people, I mean, the journeys are different, but I believe that our lived realities do inform how we navigate our society. And for me, growing up in the south of Johannesburg, just off the off-ramp for Boysons, I really was aware and alive to the othering of different people and how people are treated differently. And so from a very young age, I was curious about how people interact with one another and the why. And, you know, going through school, having that sense of justice was really important to me. And when it came to studying, it was a consideration between studying psychology and law, and I felt like law was a bigger tool for impacting greater change. And I really, from a young age when I was studying, looking into the different areas of law, it was human rights that really drew me to something within me that felt aligned to purpose and not just a paycheck or something to do from a day-to-day basis.
Thank you so much, Kayan. I mean, I'm hearing the word justice here as being the inspiration for the career that, you know, Kayan and Ezile both chose, which was law. I'd like to go to Lalelisile. I mean, you are the only one here who's not a lawyer. But of course, we know that media is also something that really is powerful and has been used to bring justice. And your work highlights the power of storytelling in advocacy spaces. What first drew you towards media and communications, and what made you realize that it could be a tool for social justice?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much, Nobukosi. So, thank you so much for having me here. My name is Lalelisile Mncwabe, as illustrated. I recently graduated from Rhodes University with a degree in journalism and media studies, and I am currently a media and communications intern at Amnesty International South Africa. And my journey, Nobukosi, in human rights advocacy started during my time at Rhodes. You know, my story, as you shared, it is different, you know, So I was always interested when I got into university, having to get into the journalism and media studies stream. I was interested in the storytelling way or road, and how media can be used to amplify voices and that are often ignored and when I started like taking journalism as well, I knew that we are forming a greater change, into being voices for the voiceless. And then that is when I started like participating in a lot of volunteer work. And that is one of the experiences, that shaped me into being the person that I am in the advocacy stream, and where I kind of like volunteered in the community engagement program, where I sort of coordinated volunteers to support the literacy development in local schools. And these are the opportunities that were opened by universities that taught me the power of using communication to create access and also building community and driving change. So that is what led me here today. So thank you so much. And I'll also leave it there for now and hoping that we'll unpack a lot more once we get into the conversation. Thank you, Nkosi.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lalelisile. I mean, jumping to you also, Nciko, you are another lawyer that has joined us today, and your career sits at the intersection of international law, climate justice, and human rights advocacy. Would you tell us what inspired you to pursue this particular path?
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to unmute. Yeah, my name is Nciko. I like to say my colonial name is Arnold. I'm from the DRC, from Eastern Congo. Yeah, so I did my primary high school studies in the Congo, and then I did part of my university in Kenya, of course, like in law, and then I went on to try to specialize in international law as well. But really, for me, in terms of interest, usually when I'm introduced and then Nciko is a lawyer, I'm usually shocked because I don't see myself as a lawyer. Yeah, my instincts are really towards humanization. So if it's music, if it's media, whatever you can bring to the table, just for us to try to improve the lives of those whose humanity has been somehow denied. And that's where I'll come in. And currently, I've been working on climate change. Many people are also, working on different, like subjects and all that. But it's not that I woke up one day or like I grew up, like appreciating nature, like the sun, the planet, and all that. But it was more as a tool in this struggle for humanization, because I remember it was around, from 2018 thereabout, when you say, thousands of people are dying, like women are being raped, this and this. It became like somehow like the normal. And then people are like, yeah, we've seen worse in Sudan, we've seen worse here. And then at some point it was like, when you say climate change, it's like the amnesties of this world, all organizations are like, where? It's like the new cool, the new thing that people who are really interested in. I think the same is happening with artificial intelligence. So that's how I entered this space. I didn't have a climate change class like during, my undergrad. So I just signed up for a course, because I can write. So I started, publishing on these matters like in journals. And I had this friend who does marketing, and he was really big on taking me through personal branding. So the way you can package yourself as a particular product. Sorry, this sounds a bit capitalistic. And then, like even on LinkedIn, I started, like gaining traction at this particular voice for climate justice. But really the goal for me has always been to use that as a conduit to draw attention to other issues that are usually disregarded or that are not globalized. They're just taken, as local issues happening because of this corrupt government, because of these people who didn't really like study. But the minute you start to, like establishing those connections with climate change, then the struggle becomes more globalized. And I think other people are doing that with like fields like artificial intelligence, like media and all these other spaces. So yeah, sorry for being a fraud. Thank you.
Oh no, not being a fraud. Thank you so much for touching on that, Nciko, and thank you so much, all of you, for just talking more about how your journey began. I mean, I would like to take it back to you, Lalelisile. I mean, you spoke about, you are a Rhodes graduate, and you talked about the fact that you were involved in volunteering and your media career really began within the university space, right? And we know that many young people participate in activism, volunteering, or organizing work while at university. So from your experience, how can someone intentionally actually build transferable skills through activism?
That's a very good question, Nobukosi. So for me, activism has always been one of the most practical classrooms for me, ever since I got into university and partaking in volunteering position. So I built some of my transferable skills through community engagement under the program called Budding Q, where I worked as a student leader, coordinating, just like I mentioned, coordinating volunteers to local schools, just helping students, supporting them with the literacy development in the local schools. And I also got to be a peer educator, which taught me how to communicate complex ideas clearly and meet people where they are. And I think I did a lot of various volunteering around university, which also included me having to host a webinar, which was called the Are You Job Ready, which also further sharpened my event planning, and a little bit of public speaking as well. And I think that's one of the things that I still need to work on as an individual as well. And then so these are the experiences that showed me that activism is not only about the protest, but you having to carry those big boards and marching, but it's also about, getting into the community and doing that consistent community work, listening to people's needs and creating solutions together. Because at the same time, you can't do all of these individuals' work alone. You need a community. And at Amnesty, I'm learning how to turn these skills into impactful media content that raises awareness and mobilizes action. So the best way to build transferable skills that I could share right now is to always reflect on what you're doing and ask yourself how the work you're doing right now builds onto in some of the skills that you are trying to venture in. So ask yourself how the work you're doing builds, project management, communication, teamwork, but most of all, resilience. That's one of the most important thing in everything that you can ever do. Do not forget that resilience is also part of it, and it's important because it'll remind you even on days where you want to give up, but resilience will keep you pushing through and through. Because not to lie, the work that we do to advocate for people is not easy, having to hear all of these stories and trying to be the voices for those people. It's not easy. So I think resilience is just one of the underlying foundations that I could leave to that person that's, work on those skills, build that project management, build on that communication skills, and also, add more into teamwork. Don't be afraid to work as a team or in the team, because being in the space of, moving from university to the professional world, in university, I know we always don't want to do assignments in group work and all of those things. But in the professional world, you need to work as a team because you can't work alone as an individual. So that's about it.
Thank you so much, Lalelisile. I mean, I want to bring in you, Nciko. I mean, you also touched on the fact that you didn't take a climate change class. You just took a course. So would you say that skill number one helped you? Did it help you in the long run? And also, which skills developed through activism do you think transfer well into other sectors or industries beyond advocacy work itself?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. So for me, I think before even get into activism per se, one is to identify like a community. So a community that you contribute to and that you are receiving from. So taking, for example, like climate change per se, climate justice and human rights, it's not that, just the cause in itself, was enough. And then from there you proceed. It's also like look for people who are interested, like in climate justice, for example, just as a field, and then to be part of that community. And it really depends on the particular skills that you have. So personally, during my undergraduate studies, I was an editor of our university journal, our university review, and I was always, like hanging out with academics, like in the university. So like writing is a skill that I've really like had, be it like journal articles, opinion pieces. So I was really able to capitalize on that. So that was one. And then before even climate justice, I've been really very much interested in decolonization. And this goes even to the decolonization of knowledge, how knowledge is produced, which knowledge is valid and all that. So it's bringing all these experiences now as the approach from which I'm looking at climate justice as a field. So as you can see, the skills that you are getting, and the minute you start, speaking about decolonization, it's really like scholarly activism in itself. Because I remember there was a time I was like, there's this lecturer who comes to teach us human rights law. But what he has been really doing semester after semester is to just project, a particular set of slides, read them out for us, and then goes away. And then, it takes some courage if you work on decolonization to say, this is actually disrespectful, it's to waste our time. We know how to read, we know how to do this. For us to be really able to learn, don't tell us about how the Germans were fighting, for example, in the 1940s. And there's war in Eastern Congo, there's war in Somalia, there's war in Sudan. How can you, like make this class relevant to our realities, our circumstances? So you can see really before I could even like meet Amnesty International or like the NGO space, just from academia, my interaction with writing. So that was already there. But then it really comes through mentorship, people who have gone through that particular journey themselves. And these are not just people who are necessarily in the same field as you, or like, it's just people who inspire you to just be brave, to be courageous. Like hard work, hard work, you can even learn it from footballers. It doesn't have to be, a particular activist who has been like doing this and this. So I think it's really, really that. And then they are bringing, like things you get from your mom, your pops, like the relatives in your family. And all these are really like skills that are being transferred to you. And it's just that you come now and capitalize that toward a particular field. So I will go back again to my friend who was doing marketing. So I was at Strathmore University in Kenya. And I don't know about South African universities, but in Kenya, so like if you do law, you do architecture, I think medicine, you are really doing like the proper courses. So people who do, it used to be called become Bachelor of Commerce. So yeah, we used to make fun of them as shopkeepers. Yeah, but then, just disabusing yourself from that attitude and accepting that you can actually learn, like from your friend who is doing marketing. Yeah, and that's when, like I started learning about personal branding. And with personal branding, like why you should take, for example, to read like 2 journals articles to just reply like in a comment on LinkedIn, such that when you reply to that, the person who has authored that, who might be, someone who might write your recommendation or mentor you in a particular field, see that you're actually serious and we can work together. So it was things like that, like your photo, how it looks like on LinkedIn, it really, really matters. Your byline, it's really like things that look so small, but these are some of the things that take us, like find life. I know maybe like many of us on this call, the amazing things we are doing, but then you're like, okay, I don't want to post on LinkedIn. I don't want to put myself out there. It will be like I'm bragging. And it's okay, like people have different personalities. Yeah, but for me, really, it was that market approach as well. And, like seeing yourself as a product in this, like big market, and then LinkedIn being that platform really helped me put myself out there. And I'm really concluding here for Amnesty International, for example, I've never applied at Amnesty. In fact, I've never seen myself working for Amnesty International because I was just like this colonial Western organization. I'll never apply there. But Amnesty ran this like algorithm on LinkedIn to select a pool of candidates. They needed someone who knew a bit of human rights, a bit of environmental law, who was bilingual, because I also like cover Madagascar. And then, yeah, the algorithm just, singled out my name as well. So you're now as part of a pool. So Amnesty calls you, they're like, okay, we saw your profile on LinkedIn, and then are you interested like in this job? Yeah, and yeah, the rest is really history. So I guess, it's just really being open-minded that skills can come, from whichever direction, not necessarily, people in the specific line of work in which you are. There are so many things we can learn from people from all walks of life.
Well, thank you, Nciko. I mean, you, Lalelisile, touched on reflecting. One of the skills is reflecting on your work and learning to work with the team. And Nciko, of course, you just touched on something important, LinkedIn, and just the power of social media, especially in today's age where people are afraid of posting and don't want to put themselves out there. But I do want to take it now to Kayan, and maybe Ezile, you can also just jump in right after Kayan. What specific steps for you, both Kayan and Ezile, helped you transition from a volunteering or organizing spaces into a professional and paid role within the human rights field and advocacy?
Thanks for your question, Nobukosi. I want to first acknowledge there was a lot of wisdom that Lalelisile and Nciko gave. So just to reiterate, some of the stuff that I did, and I think when people look from the outside, your professional career track sometimes looks linear, like it goes in one direction, and that's really not true. And reflecting on my personal journey, and I really want to echo what Lalelisile and some of the points that Nciko made, was you have, in some cases, people study for certain things. Like for Ezile and I, it was law. But just studying a law degree doesn't equal that you are an activist or human rights lawyer. That there is a bridge between all those components. So the soft skills that Lalelisile mentioned, I worked a part-time job when I was studying at uni. So I did waitressing, I did events, the marketing stuff, I did all of it. So building those soft skills, whether it be communication and project management, but also that resilience and innovative thinking, which I think is really important as a skill that's required in today's sector. I mean, I want to acknowledge how difficult it is get in the employment sector now. So, it's not just about getting a degree, and people look at you, what experience do you have? And yes, it's great to have some sort of internships and volunteering roles, and which I also did, whatever, like local NGOs, different spaces, I had all of that. And so being able to build on those skills gave me some sort of, I think, additional leverage that made me stand out when it came to recruitment process. So if you're looking at recruitments and you're saying everyone has a law degree, what are the extras that you think would be useful? What makes you more attractive or stand out within an organization? And so I think being able to demonstrate additional soft skills that give you an edge is really valuable. I think working and volunteering in these spaces gives you an edge, because if you're an activist and operating in these spaces, in these movements, etc., you have the language, because you're not only operating from a technical term of what the law is, but you're speaking the same language as human rights activists use and normal people that can relate to. Because even, and I'm moving away from an example of just law, but even if you study as a journalist, because there's lots of people that study journalism that are in the space, that have been hired, that are mobilizers, they've gone up the ranks, and it's because they understand the layout, they understand the language. Mentorship, I just want to emphasize that as well, and echo Nciko's point, because you need to identify what your strengths are and nurture that. You can't be an identical blueprint of everyone else. Your path doesn't look like mine and won't look like Izzy's or Nciko's exactly. But there might be similarities, and you should be listening and saying, okay, that might work for me, and try it out. But find out what makes you tick and what is unique for you. And I think that would give you a stronger path. And maybe just a final point that I would like to broadly say is it's really interesting and important, even when you are operating in spaces, integrity really matters. How you conduct yourself from beginning to end. People in this space and even in companies, even if you don't put them as a reference, sometimes people know each other and they talk. So how you enter in a space and conduct yourself is really important, always with integrity, and do your work with the utmost of professionalism. Even if you disagree with somebody at a level, you should know how to responsibly navigate those conflicts. Because at the end of the day, your reputation is something that is not something that anyone can take away from you except you. You will be the undoing. So I think, in short, what I'm trying to say is, yes, we are able to navigate through certain things, but I want to encourage you to say everything that you are doing up until now there are building blocks to you shaping how you see a career. And maybe just to say, law is not the only path. And I speak with authority on this because I've worked with many activists, comms officers. They all don't have the necessary stock standard requirements. Some of them come from backgrounds where they started just volunteering in SRCs, for example. And it's these soft skills that have been mentioned before that will give you an edge in discerning and make you a standout candidate in these areas. I'll stop there and hand over to Izzy. Izzy, I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that, everyone. Thank you so much, Kayan. I fully agree with everything that you just said now. And just to add on that, I just believe that we were probably all born with some activism in us. It just takes that one instance to kick off that activism in you. And it's also just experiencing some injustices, or also just seeing injustices happening in your community or in your school. And something that can kick off your activism is if you experience people being bullied, for example, if you are still a kid at school, or just seeing human rights violations, and the necessary steps to actually use or to take in order to make your activism into probably like a paid role, because most of the activists, people that I know, including myself, I didn't just start thinking that, oh, one day I want to be paid for fighting for human rights. It's something that if you see that people's rights are being violated, it actually gets to you because you are activism at heart. I mean, an activist at heart. And when that happens, then you start volunteering and also being involved in community debates and also public speaking and awareness to the people. And also that can lead into some paid roles. But as activists, and most of the people that I know, we've worked, especially like here at Lawyers for Human Rights and Section 27 Human Rights Watch, and I also believe Amnesty International, there are people that have joined the organizations not with the, like in their head, with the mind that I need to start working here so that you pay me. They started because seeing injustices happening, they started working there so that the people in their communities or in their schools, they can use them as a tool to kind of like get into spaces where there will be the voice for the voicelesses. But with that being said, like there are certain things that or steps that you can take to make your activism a paid role, but with passion for activism and also like fight for human rights, when you start as an activist, like usually you don't even have the I want to be paid in mind, but volunteering and also being involved in debating and also public speaking is one of the crucial steps that you can take into making your activism a paid role. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ezile. I think you've touched on something that's important, talking about public speaking and debating that. I do want to ask, because sometimes you have people who don't have access, who didn't really have access to such opportunities to expand on their public speaking or student leadership skills, right? And then they get to university and it's kind of like they're still trying to figure that out. How valuable are those skills, right, in professional human rights spaces, or when you're going for an interview or when you are applying for a job?
Yeah. Those skills are very valuable, but in most cases, I also think and believe that we don't need a final or like a well-cooked product. If a person is willing, or we, as human rights organization, I'll speak about me. I started as a volunteer when I was doing my very first year at uni. And I know that I was the worst, probably worst candidate, but because I had a goal in mind, I was willing to be used as a tool to fight for human rights. I saw injustices growing up. I saw injustices as an adult. I still see injustices even today. So the skills that I had at the time are totally different from what I have gained now. But because I was willing to put on the work and I was willing to speak for the communities that I came from, and also willing to speak for the people that I believed were voiceless at the time. So that was kind of like looked at as, you know what you want and you know what you're talking about, whether you are able to articulate it properly, but we see that this is where you're going and this is your goal. And for me, the public speaking skills and the debating skills or public participation, those were the things that I probably like wasn't even exposed to growing up. But because I knew and saw what was happening, I was willing to like be out there and speak about those. So I think that having those kind of skills is important, but also like being able to explain the experiences that you have gone through or like what you've seen in the community is also just as important.
Okay, thank you so much for touching on that. I do want to bring you, Kayan, into the conversation because, I mean, you did speak about, sometimes you've encountered people who didn't have the most, wonderful skills, I guess, and most impressive CVs. And I think the CVs is something that a lot of people, especially the young people, are always trying to figure out how to master, right? And especially when you're applying for huge organizations like Lawyers for Human Rights and law firms, right? So I would love to ask, how can applicants ensure that their CVs and their cover letters stand out? Because that is a constant question for them.
Great question, and I'm very happy to answer it. Maybe just to put a caveat to say, I'm going to speak on behalf of my experience in organizations I've worked with. I also appreciate that big law firms and maybe other organizations have slightly different criteria sometimes. So I do want to flag that. But I think first and foremost, for me personally, an authentic voice is really key. Especially in the era of AI, which is not a bad thing. We use AI all the time, but I would be maybe a bit cautious to completely rely on AI to draft your motivation letters or your CVs or your applications. Please always make sure, if you do use that to assist you, that your voice is authentic and it reads through. Your background is really built into there. It doesn't read like a cold, unrelatable communication piece, because just as you are using AI that's been generating something, possibly you're going to get 1,000 or 100 similar letters like that. So authenticity in your voice, in how you communicate, is really key. It's very important to triple check what you're putting in. If you're putting in an application, make sure the correct person is addressed to, there's no spelling mistakes. It's these small things, these attention to details that will get you a better chance in the door. Because if you're applying for, depending on what type of job, people might see this and think, okay, this person is really careless. I'll say not we, I've come across applications where it's it mentions a wrong organization, for example. So it comes across as you haven't really given it much thought. And it's okay if you're putting out 100 applications. I get it. It's tough out there, but just put that attention to detail because it does matter. I think when you speak, especially if you're starting out and you've just come fresh out of university, we wouldn't expect you to have a vast number of experience, right? So you haven't worked at a number of places, but what would be useful is for you to demonstrate if you have been able to volunteer or intern at places, because that speaks to your commitment. And I think speaking about the types of skills you've picked up, and even if it's not within those organizations, let's talk about if you've done a part-time job waitressing somewhere, put in there and demonstrate what soft skills that you've developed and you're really good at that would add value to the role. So link those skills to the role that you're applying for and saying, hey, I would be great at this, even though I don't have maybe that experience, but I've picked it up in different ways. That still makes you a strong candidate. And I want to echo what Izzy said. For me, and for LHR, we're not always looking for the most polished candidate, because that can sometimes be a facade. You know, you can get a really perfect 10 out of 10 application, but then when the person interviews in front of you, something is not connecting. And so I'm going to go back to my first point, whereas communication and ensuring that you communicate who you are authentically, and for us getting a feel of who you are as a person, your passion for the interest or the issue and why you're applying is important, and your openness and willingness to learn. That is, I think, a really key characteristic that makes you probably more interesting personally than a straight A student that in theory ticks all the right boxes. I think we're all human. We are not perfect. I still struggle with public speaking on some days. I sometimes go completely blank, but that's just part of who we are as humans, right? And so we have to also accept one another in a really organic and beautiful way that is Israel. And yeah, let me stop there.
Thank you so much, Kayan. I mean, this is very interesting. I want to bring in Nciko because you sort of taking you back. You mentioned at the beginning, of course, we touched on the fact that you didn't really take climate change class. You kind of discovered it along the way, and then you took a course. And so you discovered sort of a particular area that you found that you could expand on and sort of work in, right? And so I want to ask you, and I would love for also Lalelisile to add on into this conversation. Are there particular areas within human rights work that you feel currently need more young professionals?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for that. I think the whole human rights ecosystem actually need us. Yeah, no offense to the seniors, but yeah, you can see what is happening. The system is not working. And even, the wave of Gen Z protest that we are having, all around the world is actually even challenging how we do activism and how we think about it. So I remember having a discussion with one of my mentors, within Amnesty International, a human rights defender who has been really in the game for decades. And then, he was really saying, Nciko, you really need to slow down. You need to be comfortable with the fact that some of the things that you are fighting for now, you might not see the results in your lifetime. Yeah, but then you have Gen Z protests. We want water, we want electricity, we want food, we want it now. Yeah, they come back to the streets like tomorrow, okay, we want a whole National Assembly to go. We want the Senate to go. Now we want you as a president to go. We want a new regime, blah, blah, blah. We are seeing it in Asia, organizing their own elections. And then, so I think there is a bigger emphasis has been on work experience, the number of years of work experience that you've had. But I think many critical recruiters right now are more looking out for new thinking. So how can you come and help us, deal with some of the disruptions that we are facing right now? So, for example, the international legal order, so to speak, literally it has just been reduced to like, whatever we have on the website of the UN, of the African Union maybe. And you can see really, people are not abiding by this. So we really need, like new thinking. And even interacting with artificial intelligence, like climate justice, even climate justice itself as well, as this new cool thing, and then the space becomes really saturated. And then again, unless you distinguish yourself, with a particular approach, you become redundant. I think there is so much space for us, like as young people, like on these tables. And one of the things that you realize when you reach, like some of these tables, you see that people who are there are actually not superhuman. They're not special, like in a particular kind of way. Yeah, and there is actually space for you to actually contribute as well. But one major issue has been, so of course, imposter syndrome has always been there, but also you have to somehow prove yourself, because like myself, I've gotten things like, this is not how things are done at Amnesty International. Someone who has been there for 20 years. But then you know very well that you are hired because there's a particular thinking that you are bringing. And when you try to implement that, you are bringing change, of course, things like, like age will come, like the number of years of work experience that you have. It's like, there's this stubborn, like, boy who cannot be taught and everything and all that. Those are some of the things that you really receive. And in certain meetings, you can actually be dismissed. Like your views are really, really like dismissed. Yeah, but then again, it's up to you to, fight for yourself or like just let it slide. There are multiple ways. Some of the things I do myself, I'll be in this meeting, it will be dismissed like that. I'll go and write a journal paper about that, and then I will publish. It will come out, like in journals actually, or that those people who dismiss your views actually hold dear. So this can be the Oxford University Press. It can be, like these journals in Europe. It's not that we don't have journals on the continent, but there's a particular point that you want to make, and people are watching, not just within the organization, but things that you are also doing in terms of your extracurricular activities. Public speaking classes that you are taking, like debates that you are being, like part of, volunteering work that you are doing. I have a colleague, like her name is Yoli, so I just have to mention that. But for me, she's really like the best community builder that I know. But like within Amnesty, she's just, like a finance official, like dealing with numbers and everything. But she's been putting people through schools, allowing, like helping families that have no source of income to take even, like driving school classes, and then really empowering families, like building dreams, so to speak. And people like watch out for like a number of these things. So for me, really like the emphasis, like experience is really key, and that can even come from volunteering. But like new thinking, I think is very key, but also trusting your judgment. But it becomes also like really tricky to balance, not coming out as hostile, like stubborn, but also to hold your ground, like at some point, for like what it is that you believe in.
Thank you so much, Nciko. I mean, I'd love, Lalelisile, for you to also jump in, because you have a career in media and communications, and it's not really a very much traveled career path, or should I say a road rather. For you, how did you also sort of discover that maybe I could also sort of expand and build a career in this specific skill, right? And what other areas as well, just adding on to what Nciko has said, do you think young people should go into?
Thank you so much, Nobukosi. But one thing I want to mention before I continue to answer the question, I think it was Kayan or Ezile, I'm not quite sure who mentioned, but I think the importance of mentorship is one thing that really works for an individual. And I speak of this from a personal point of view that during my years at university, I think for 3 years, I was wandering around just trying to figure out what am I going to do after I get this degree. But then as time went by, I just knew that I want to get in this space. But then to get in the space, what do I do? That's when I started venturing into social media, LinkedIn, and started like getting connections. And then that's where also I got to have my first internship. And then when I got my first internship there, I built relationships as well. And then that's where I gained myself a mentor who was able to guide me through into like, okay, let's sit down. What do you want to do? What do you want to venture in when you're done? Like narrow everything down. You'll have a pile of list of everything that you want to do. Yes, that's obvious, but then it's always good to like it's good to have the options open, but at the same time to make sure that you know what you want. Like stick onto those, like have the pros and cons, and then look at that and look what works for you and what doesn't work for you as well. And then that's when you know that I want to venture in this space, and then you will be able to know which particular connections to look at, and then your algorithm as well will start like generating that content that will be specifically for you as well. And we know how the algorithm works nowadays. You search one thing and now it will show you the other thing as well. And even if something you're not interested in, that will start showing you that. So my point is, get yourself mentorship, and so that it can like niche you down into having somebody who can hold you accountable into say, but you said you want to do this, what happened to that? And then having somebody to it's like having somebody to calm you down in when your head is spinning, and you don't know what to do. And that person will be there like, no, calm down. I like, and they know, or they have that experience of how the world works already. So they are there to guide you. And I think that is one of the things that worked for me quite well. The opportunities to have that helped me build a strong portfolio as well. So I think as young people, I think it was in Nciko, the importance of volunteering as well. I remember also in my time, I was a freelance writer, and I used to write for the student magazine, the student newsletter. So that is one thing that also helped me with getting skills, and also public speaking is a thing and a problem to some of us as a youth. But then the more that you try to speak and get out of your comfortable position as well is what will help you. And I speak of this from a very personal point of view as well. I'm a person who's always scared of speaking. I always like try to write down what I want to say first before I speak it, because sometimes if I want to say something, I'll be like, okay, that doesn't make sense, but writing it down just makes so much sense for me. But then that's one thing that works for me. It won't work for everybody. But again, I think it's one of the skills that we need to learn, because when you apply for jobs, interviews takes place. And when those take place, how are you going to try to present yourself in that space? So try to put yourself in positions that are comfortable for you. Even if you don't want to do it, do it even if you don't want to do it. That's one thing I'll also leave everybody here with. Just do it even if you don't want to do it, because these are the skills that will help you in the long run, and they'll be valuable at the same time. So yeah, I think I answered the question to the best of my capabilities as well.
Yes.
Thank you,
Thank you
Nciko.
so much, Lalelisile. I mean, I think the recurring term that has been used has been build skills, volunteer. Lalelisile has spoken about freelancing, being a writer. Nciko also spoke about being a writer. So I want to ask, especially to Ezile, Kayan, and Nciko, how important is post-grad, such as an LLM, because you guys do possess an LLM, compared to practical experience and field work? I mean, we can start with Ezile first, and then Kayan, and then Nciko.
Okay, thank you so much. So having postgrad and also having practical experience of volunteering is important. But can you imagine being like a postgrad student who has no idea what is going on the grassroots level. So I believe that, but also I'm going to put it in my experience. I started doing my internship or my volunteer work when I was an undergrad. I was still at school, like very first foundations of school. And that has helped me into understanding everything that is happening throughout my undergrad and also going into my postgrad. I am now going there with full knowledge of what is happening on the ground and also like having that experience. And when you're doing a research on your thesis or like you're doing submissions, you know exactly what you are talking about. So having a postgrad is important, but having grassroots experience or like foundational experience is even more important than possessing a postgrad. Because as a postgrad student, you need to know exactly what you are talking about, not just in theory, but it should also be something that, oh, I've been to this community and this is what was spoken about, and oh, this is what was said, and you're going back and you're putting it in your research, or but it needs to be, but it's not a one size fits all thing. It has to, like, as a human rights lawyer and also like as a researcher, as somebody who is an activist, you need to know what you're speaking about and you need to be speaking about lived realities. And we know that there are certain things that we can read about on paper, but having something that you're speaking about that you've gone through it, you've seen it, and you've engaged with the communities, you've seen it with your own eyes, it actually puts you in a way better position than a postgrad who's just no offense to anyone, but like a postgrad who hasn't done any grassroots activism. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm to be honest, I want to echo what Ezile has said. For me personally, and maybe just to share, I only obtained my postgrad 2 years ago. I had the imposter syndrome. I didn't think I was smart enough, and it was something that put me off. But I do have a curious nature of learning. So I was always learning in informal settings, and I wasn't always getting a postgrad a degree or certificate. But if I had to choose between a candidate that has really exceptional practical experience that is linked to what the position or role is versus somebody that just has a postgrad, and I agree with Izzy, it's on a case-by-case situation, because maybe that person with a postgrad has experience. That would be the best. But I think the practical experience component is really important, because especially from a legal perspective, from a human rights organization perspective, the law on paper is very different in how it is implemented. So sometimes I've attended lectures and I'm like, that is a fantastic idea in theory, but knowing what happens in communities and how it affects them, I know that wouldn't work. And so I really do absolutely endorse what Ezile has said. I think if you have an option of pursuing both, that's fantastic. I don't think you should pursue it for the wrong reasons. If this postgrad is something that is within your opportunities and it's something you genuinely want to pursue because you're keen on it and it's interesting and you think it will advance your career, great, go for it. But don't discount yourself because you don't have a postgrad. And I speak from experience because I attend, my LLB is not from one of the big universities, but that doesn't preclude people and shouldn't preclude people from their capabilities. And I do think it's important to focus on how to make yourself a more well-rounded individual that can operate in these spaces. Nciko, I want to call you the disruptor in a good way, because I really do appreciate your thinking of the need for innovation. We have to constantly find new ways of tackling the problems. The problems are just getting bigger, and the world in its way is finding new ways, especially with the use of technology to suppress rights and violate people's rights. And we also need to be equally as innovative and be quick on our feet. And we need to create spaces where we can incubate that unique thinking and not think old school, because sometimes universities teach, in some cases, in an old school thinking, and that is not always helpful. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Kayan. Nciko?
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I think you've covered pretty much it all. Yeah, but maybe just a couple of additions. I think also it depends on the field in which you are. Yeah, I mean, if you are venturing in business and you are really proceeding, you've started your company and everything and all that, who are we to come and ask you for papers and degrees and all that? But also even like certain companies, really like business oriented, they really focus very much like on the know-how and how to proceed. I know the legal field is usually very conservative, so to speak. So like nowadays, even when you look at opportunities online, so they start, like requirement, masters in international relations, in this, to just, like get you like through the door. But the truth is you don't yeah, and I really, really deeply believe this. I think, like an LLB is actually tougher than some of the master's programs. Yeah, in the sense that you can actually sit down and self-teach yourself the knowledge that you could have gotten, from a particular program. But again, then again, we live in this world where, you have to show papers and present them. But speaking of postgrad, I know of many people who just do an LLM like a master's just because we live in a world where after your undergrad you have to do a master's, but they don't ask themselves, like the why. So I'm doing this LLM so that, and then you just go and do an LLM in a particular field that, so there is no theory of change, so to speak. What do you really want to achieve with this? And for some people also, because looking for a job is in itself a full-time job. So it's like rather than doing this, so the easier way is I will just do this LLM and proceed with that. So I think the why is very important. And this might not be, maybe like a problem for South Africa. But for many of us who have to leave our countries and you are making, a decision as to which school you'll have to go to, you are also even asking, like a market question. So if I study in this particular place, when I finish, will I get an internship? Will I be connected? Yeah, or like, will I even be retained by the university? If you're interested in that. I've never recruited myself, but I know particularly when it comes to research and even like the NGO world, I think Amnesty does not put an emphasis on like PhDs, masters, and all that. Of course, I think they count because the best story in the cover letter really like wins it. But I know of colleagues, who are managing people who have PhDs, and then they only have, like masters and all that. I know of colleagues who it is only now that they're doing their LLB. So they've been really doing activism from the grassroots without a university degree. And it's just as, like other colleagues in the office are actually pushing them. Yeah, just have this degree. Just really, like put it out there. So it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. So it's just really like in that particular context. But also for people who are hiring, so many a times you'll be looking for a consultant, for example. I don't know, to do research in this particular rural area. This is really like NGO work. Yeah, but then when you take someone who has done the Center for Human Rights, so you put them on a payroll, you are paying them, like really properly just because they went to that school. But they're community organizers, community leaders who understand this place way better than that person who has gone to Pretoria. But what do you do like as a recruiter and all that? And this is why I think, decolonization is very key. So you take them as research subjects rather than this is a person that you still hire by the same metric, you put them, like on the same like payroll as this person that you take, for example, for 3 months. So I think the ball is not just in the court of people who are applying, but also people who are recruiting to be able to address, like some of these issues. Yeah, but really for like a postgrad, I'll still go back to my point. Yeah, like the why question, like this, so that question I think is very important. Like, why are you doing that? And at some point, don't get me wrong, like it can just be for pure survival. So like it will give me a stipend. which is, like good enough to take me out of this particular environment where I don't want to be. That's really like a why that I can personally really like live with, but not just, like doing a program for the sake of doing a program.
Thank you so much, Nciko. I think in the interest of time, because time is moving so quickly, if everyone could just please write their questions in the message box. We also still have some questions that were sent prior to this conversation. So in the meantime, while everyone is still putting their questions, one of the questions that some of the members wanted to know is that, human rights work can be emotionally demanding, and sometimes it can take a toll on you. So what kind of support systems, habits, or practices have helped you guys to sustain yourselves while working in these difficult advocacy spaces? I mean, we can go back to Lalelisile.
Thank you so much, Nobukosi. So I am new in the industry. So I am fresh out of varsity. So I haven't had an opportunity to dive deep into a situation that took a toll on me. But although I can think of an instance where it did, like there was a time where there was this particular work that I had to do, and which was passed on to me as well. The way I know my team and at work, we are such a team that really emphasizes mental health, your well-being, there's the constant check-in, about like how you're doing, how is that task taking a toll on you, and that advocacy campaign or whatnot, So some of the steps that I have opted to take at that time is just to have somebody to talk to, but also if you don't have someone to talk to at the office, it's always good to always have someone outside of the office, although not to get into the context of the context, because sometimes the work that we do is confidential in the sense that you can't share it with people outside. So it's always good to even talk to people inside rather, because they are there to support you, and there are support structures although in the company as well. You can always talk to your manager, you can always talk, if you can't talk to your manager, there is a colleague you can always go to. And, just taking time off as well, that's also helpful if you feel like things are taking a toll on you. But so far, in my experience, I haven't had a time where I, had to like take a break like that. But I just know that whenever things get tough for me, I know that I have a support system that will always be there when I need that support, but also just to take it back to maybe university, because there are things that I did back then, that just could take a lot out of your mental state, but what I did at that time was I just went to the student counseling center, which helped a lot, just enrolling yourself in that, because there are always ways to get help. Mental health is one thing that is of priority in every space, in every organization, in every volunteer work that you do. I'm sure that one thing they always prioritize, even if your studies are taking a toll on you, but mental health or your health always comes first. So an emphasis in saying that you are never alone in whatever that you're facing, but just always look around you, because people around you are always there to help you. They're always there to listen as well, and they're always there to give you the support that you need, even if they can't give it to you at that time, but they can refer you to the proper channels for you to get that help that you need. I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much, Lalelisile. I mean, you've touched on a lot of important practices that you yourself implement into keeping yourself still intact. And so I want to jump back to Kayan, because you have 11 years of experience, right? And especially because you deal with such sensitive issues such as gender-based violence and refugees and migration. I would love for you to sort of add on before we jump into another question. What are your habits and sort of support system and practices that have helped you sustain yourself while working in these difficult advocacy spaces?
Thank you. A very important question. So, want to echo what Lalelisile had mentioned. I think the topics about mental health these days are so important. And especially in this type of work that we do, it's extremely traumatic, it's triggering. We want to ensure that we're doing the work in the long haul, that it's sustainable. So think about running a marathon and not a sprint. And so being able to assess where your mental health and taking whatever tools looks at mental health for you or wellness for you individually, which is different for everyone. For me personally, I think having an accountability partner, it doesn't mean that you need to talk into details about what is bugging you, but somebody that knows you well enough that is able to lovingly but firmly say, hey, you're not okay. You need to do a temperature check and be able to call you out. Because sometimes we running at full steam ahead at 200 kilometers per hour, and we're missing the signs that is making us dehumanizing us and desensitizing us, because the work is so it's a lot. And so I think that's really important, to be able to carve out specific time that gives you joy, like what brings you joy and what is wellness, and that ties together sometimes, and being able to mentally shut down for a period of time sometimes. The problem might still be here when I get back, but is it something that requires my urgent 24/7 thinking, or can I just take a break to look after myself? Because you can't pour from an empty glass. And I think it's really important to be able to have that sounding board. So know yourself well, but if you have somebody that you can debrief with, that can call you out when they're not seeing that you're so well, and that you're pushing yourself too hard, that's really important. And I think we do have to be optimists to some extent in the work. So finding the joys in life, because otherwise you would be overburdened with just depression. And so find little things that make you happy, and appreciate things and celebrate the small wins, because we're in it for the long haul. I think those are really important. Maybe just a final point is finding ways where you can create safe spaces. So the work environment should ideally be that, in creating a safe space for you to operate within. But if that is a problem, how do you find safe spaces for you to speak to? And maybe it speaks to your accountability partner or somebody within the office you can kind of debrief with. Those, I think, are really important.
Thank you so much, Kayan. Just to go to our chat box from some of our guests. The first question, I mean, anyone could just jump in and just answer if they feel like they are able to answer the question. The first question is, does speaking various languages add a value within the human rights space?
I'll just go quickly, if that's okay, Nobukusi.
Yes, of course.
A resounding yes, absolutely. I think in human rights, I think it's a very personal language. Like when we speak about the issues, you need to resonate with that. And sometimes when we use big language, like, and I'm going to use the colonization example, when we only speak in English, when your native language or your home language, the language that you dream in and you should be able to communicate in, is not resonating with you, you are losing impact. You are losing people's understanding and the link in what makes us relate to one another, what makes us connected to a cause. And so I think having an ability to speak your home language adds tremendous value, because you're able to use the specific words that someone will really resonate and identify with. And I've seen it. I did a project in the Eastern Cape for 4 years, and unfortunately, I don't speak isiXhosa. So we always had to rely on an interpreter to translate the law. And even though I was using plain language, there's something that was missing when I would try explain it, simply because people didn't understand. So it's absolutely, I think, a value add. And if you are able to demonstrate that, it makes it highly, highly valuable. So I'll stop there.
Okay. Does anyone have any other thoughts before I jump into the next question?
Nobukosi, I'd love to add on that as well. I think having to know various languages as well, just like how Kayan mentioned, there's always there's always a problem in having to relay a message in isiXhosa if you are an English person, So like in an organization, if you know various languages, I know that you could be a valuable asset in organization, because now in instances for human rights, for example, if you are going out, at least if somebody speaks isiSotho or something, the Sesotho, then that that person is going to be of value. If we go out there and communicate with people who don't understand English, then language barrier won't be a thing, So in this particular stream, I think it is good to not only just know one language, but familiarize yourself with various languages, even if it's not the full depth of it, but then just for understanding the context, to be able to relay the message to the other person, it's good for you to actually learn that language. And I know that Johannesburg is known for its diverse languages, and I think it's also good as well to just learn the languages, and it will always be of good company, it'll always be of good use in an organization that you always work for. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lalelisile. Jumping into our next question from our attendee, it says, how do you not lose your head in the storm of unemployment in the social justice space? It seems every organization wants a law degree, whereas I am in social science. So should I just do a law degree to better my chances? I mean, we can go to Nciko.
Yeah, no. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I think even job search itself as well. Yeah, again, we need to unpack that really, really further. Yeah, because I know of people who have gotten jobs not because of the degrees that they have, but just their attitude, how good they are to other people, to just try to put yourself in a position where you will be seen. So maybe this space is where you're interested. So you can start, by volunteering, and then before you realize it, you are already in the organization. Yeah, or just, attending, the way we are speaking here, and then from here, you can reach out, via LinkedIn, and then you see this opportunity, you recommend that, these are my interests. So those things are out there. But if you are in a position to do another degree, and you have, time to do that, because time is also a factor, but also the resources to also do that, I think, why not? But also they're short courses, and they have been really, really helping. Yeah, you can be, in a specific field, but then you have, a couple of certificates, I think, in another field. But looking for a job, I personally think that many of the jobs posted online, they already know who they want to pick. And employment nowadays, you get, the bulk of it from interpersonal relationships. So, and that's why I go back again to the idea of having a community, because within that community that you are contributing to, people also no, our comrade right there is looking for XYZ, and they can be able to connect you like that. Yeah, but don't get me wrong, you can still apply and get. Personally, I did about 100 applications to various branches of the United Nations. I didn't even get a rejection email. So there is also that part. But I know people who apply 2-3 times. So there is no one size fits all approach, I guess, to this. And it really just depends on the person and how willing you are and committed you are to finding a job by exploring, the number of ways that are really that are out there. But also don't feel scared of starting something by yourself. It can be your own organization, and then you just start it slowly and proceed from there.
Thank you so much, Nciko. I mean, I'm pretty sure maybe others have thoughts as well on this. So let me just add another question, and perhaps whoever wants to also answer the previous question can answer this question as well, from one of our attendees. They said, hi, everyone. I am Safa, human rights lawyer based on Somaliland. Thank you very much for this initiative. My question is if Amnesty organizations promote more trainings and workshops in East African countries. And maybe we can go back to you, Nciko, because you are one of the regional officers in East Africa. So maybe we can start with you again, and then we can go back to the others.
Yeah, but also Congo is everywhere. One in SADC, in the East African community. Yeah, but yeah, there are like plenty of courses, free courses by Amnesty International online on racial justice and human rights, like human rights defender. There's really like a ton of courses that you can find out there. Yeah, and then we have an office in Nairobi, both for the country session, Kenya, but also for the East African region, so to speak. And colleagues have been really working on that. Maybe we can chat a bit more, just like really after this. Yeah, because there's so many ways of engaging, activism work. It's not just to be, like an employee, like directly. You can be a member. You are contributing to just, like some of the work that the organization is doing, including in Somalia. I think we've done like work on droughts, like floods in the country. And now we are even having activists who are being, persecuted by the state just for speaking up their minds. Yeah, and then there's more, like forced evictions. They are going on right now. So everyone wants land. I guess the current government wants to give land to their close friends before they can get out of power. There's so many issues, I think, and the workers are very few. So if you are really interested, I'm just, like putting it out there, like there are so many ways to get involved, which is not, direct like employment. But if you're interested really like in human rights, particularly in that context, I think there are plenty of ways to get involved. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Nciko. I think in the interest of time, let me just move on to the last question. This one says, hi, Ezile. Thanks for being here. You mentioned that volunteering and getting experience during undergrad really helped you stand out as a candidate attorney. My question is two-part. One, what does the day-to-day look like for a candidate attorney in the human rights space? Is it mostly... So okay, sorry. I don't have a mic, so I'm using. So she said, what does the day-to-day look like for you as a candidate attorney in the human rights space? Is it mostly research? And sort of, do you get involved in litigation and client work? And then the other question is, what advice would you give someone who wants to explore this route but does not have extensive experience?
Thank you so much, Taniwe, for that question. That's such a good question. And also, I know that it's going to benefit everybody who has similar. So my day-to-day work as a candidate attorney in a human rights space, it includes all of the above. So I do get involved in client consultations, but mostly in the department that I'm currently in, we don't have walk-in clients to the clinic. We actually go out and have consultations with these clients in their respective communities. And also I do a lot of research and I do a lot of drafting. And I have been involved in a bit of litigation. And just to put it out there, so litigation is actually, I think it's mostly, I don't know if I'd say encouraged, but it's something that like is borne by the community consultations and also community experiences, because everything that you put in your heads of arguments that you're going to take to court is actually the lived realities and experiences of the clients everything that the client sat you down and spoke to you about it, it's exactly the same thing that your lawyers or like your advocates or your representatives are going to take to court. So we do get involved in that, and that's like my day-to-day like work as a human rights CA. And to be quite honest, I'm not sure if my experience in volunteering is something that put me or maybe like gave me an advantage as a CA or like being able to be a CA. But I would say that, as Kayan said, it's mostly like, what is it that you're willing to do? Like, what is your passion? Are you able to take your practical experience and put it into like actual work? Or are you able to like show us what you've done and the impacts that you've made in people's lives? And before starting applying for my CA position, I had already worked in the clinic for a number of years, volunteering and assisting people. And most of the things that actually made me not want to leave my volunteer work was because I have separation anxiety and I actually want to see things into finality. So I was not able to just leave things hanging without seeing, did my client actually get that refugee status? Did my client actually get that ID that we helped apply for? So I think that like being able to put things and also like wanting to get your things into finality, it actually put me on the, I don't know, like on a space where I was able to be maybe, I don't know, like the okay candidate for being a CA. Not the best candidate, probably like the okay candidate to be the CA. And also the advice that I would give to someone who wants to explore this route, volunteer. Be able, like, be out there and put yourself out there. It's okay to ask questions that way you don't understand. It's okay to look like, oh, like, what are you even doing, to make yourself look kind of like very curious as a person, and also being involved in like book clubs if you want, or like be able to like put yourself out there and be willing to work and be always available to assist people when they need assistance, because you don't know like who's watching you, one, and also like if maybe your next employer is in the room. Ask questions, involve yourself in debates, involve yourself in activism, like climate change activism. If there's something happening in your community and you need like you know that the community needs assistance, you have a laptop, or you can go to the internet cafe, write a letter to like NGOs, or write a letter to your municipality. So like volunteering doesn't start going into like a formal sector or like into organizations like LHR. You can actually start by like approaching the municipality in your area, or like reporting certain things to the police, or organizing people, lobbying, or like mobilizing, and like having your voice out there, or like being heard. Sometimes we are called very loud as women because we be complaining about stuff that is happening, but it's very important that our voices are heard as human beings and also as like human rights lawyers. So like the advice that I would give someone to want to explore this route and they don't have extensive experience, you don't need to go into a formal sector. You can actually start by like in your community, in your school, wherever you are at that moment, with whatever resources that you have. It's definitely something that you don't need certain level of experience to be able to get into like organizations like these ones.
Thank you so much, Ezile. I mean, thank you so much to our guest panelists, Ezile, Nciko, Kayan, and Lalelisile. I mean, before I hand over to Jacqueline, just to close us off and just to sort of wrap up the conversation and just everything that, you know, we had learned, because I think this was such an important conversation, and I hope that everyone has been able to take a bit from this conversation. I do have to ask just a fun question before I hand over to Jacqueline. One word. How would you describe your career in one word to your 21-year-old self? Just one word and just 5 seconds. I'm giving you 5 seconds and then we have to jump, we have to wrap it up. And Nciko, maybe we could start with you.
Yeah, unpredictable.
Unpredictable. Okay, I love that. Kayan?
Impactful.
Impactful. I love that. I mean, our recent graduate, Lalelisile.
Fulfilling.
Fulfilling. I love that. I love the words. And Ezile, close us off.
I think
I think
those are
you
it.
missed it.
Yeah.
Or is she not here anymore? I think I think.
Sorry, was that for me? The question
Yes,
is,
I think it cut you off.
okay. I would think that to my 21-year-old self, I would say, it's very brave.
Okay, I love the words brave, unpredictable, impactful, fulfilling, just beautiful. Thank you so much for the conversation once again. Jacqueline, please jump to just close us off and just to thank our attendees for just attending. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nobukosi, and thank you so much to our panelists, our wonderful panelists, for sharing great nuggets with us from unpredictability, being brave in the workplace, as well as ensuring that you're impactful is quite a strong feat, especially within this human rights space. We do notice that there's often quite maybe some disdain or discouragement based off of the job market, but I don't think it should discourage us, especially if you're volunteering, if you're looking at other opportunities within your university spaces, your communities, or even in the various organizations that you work in, by ensuring to apply the skills that you have, as well as looking at various ways you can utilize higher education to upskill yourself. Would like to also thank Amnesty International for allowing the Alumni Network to be able to host this event, and we definitely will keep the conversation going. For those who have not noticed, Busha has dropped in the chat a link to our online resources that you may peruse in the meantime. Following this conversation, we'll definitely receive a survey from the Amnesty International team, and the conversation will definitely keep going. Thank you so much all for attending this wonderful event.
Thank you so much, everyone. You are welcome to exit, and I hope everyone has a great weekend, and we hope to see you soon at one of our future, I guess, online events as the Alumni Network. Thank you once again to our panelists as well.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you all.